If you spend enough time in the weirder corners of the internet, you will eventually stumble across a completely unhinged yet oddly compelling theory that Donald Trump and his family possess working time travel technology. The evidence usually starts with the writings of a late 19th century American author named Ingersoll Lockwood. In the 1890s, he published a series of adventure novels about a wealthy, precocious, and endlessly troublesome boy named Baron Trump. In these stories, young Baron lives in a lavish estate called Castle Trump and embarks on underground journeys guided by his trusted mentor, a man referred to as Don. Lockwood also wrote a political novel titled 1900, or The Last President. It opens in New York City with mass protests breaking out on Fifth Avenue following the shocking election of a populist outsider candidate who brings about the collapse of the Republic. Then, theorists point to the scrapbooks of Charles Delschow, a Prussian butcher living in Texas around the turn of the century. He spent his final years painting thousands of pages of strange, balloon-like flying machines he claimed were built by a secret aero club. Scattered within the frantic text of these sketches, you can find the word Trump written directly next to the numbers 45 and 47. Add in a 1950s science fiction novel written by rocket scientist Wernher von Braun, which imagines a future society on Mars governed by a leader whose official title is Elon, and the conspiracy goes into overdrive. Taken together, these isolated historical fragments line up so neatly with modern political figures that it tricks the brain. It feels deliberate, a sequence of events that seems far too specific to be a series of random cosmic accidents. To explain how this temporal manipulation might actually work, the theory leans on a very real event. When inventor Nikola Tesla died in his New York hotel room in January 1943, the U.S. government immediately seized his research files. The Alien Property Custodian Agency needed an expert to evaluate whether Tesla had left behind blueprints for exotic weapons or advanced energy systems. They brought in a brilliant MIT physicist named John G. Trump, Donald Trump's uncle. This is where the internet takes a massive leap. The theory suggests John Trump found something extraordinary in those boxes, perhaps the actual mechanics of time travel, and quietly passed the knowledge down to his family. Because Tesla's seized papers, John Trump's review of them, and Lockwood's novels are all documented historical facts, the boundaries between reality and science fiction blur. We have to look closely at the actual archives to see what is really going on here. Investigating these artifacts requires pulling them out of Reddit threads and returning them to the specific historical moments where they were created. Dr. John Trump's official evaluation of Tesla's later notes didn't uncover hidden mechanics for bending spacetime. He explicitly reported that the work was primarily speculative and philosophical, containing no sound, workable principles. The spooky names in Ingersoll Lockwood's novels also lose their shine upon a closer read. The protagonist's actual name is Wilhelm von Trump. Baron is just his aristocratic title. And his mentor isn't named Don. He's a Spaniard named Constantino Bartolomeo, who goes by the standard honorific Don Fum. Lockwood's other book, The Last President, is entirely bound to the politics of the late 19th century. The dangerous outsider in the story is a thinly veiled critique of William Jennings Bryan, a real Democratic presidential candidate at the time who campaigned against the gold standard and terrified wealthy conservatives. And the Baron Trump adventures were just Lockwood trying to cash in on the booming market for absurd, surreal children's literature, triggered by the massive success of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. These texts are ordinary, forgotten products of their specific era, deeply rooted in the culture of the late 19th century. The same is true for Charles Delschow. He was a retired butcher living in isolation, spending his days pasting newspaper clippings into sketchbooks and weaving a massive fictional narrative about the Sonora Aero Club. His drawings of magic anti-gravity gases and advanced aircraft completely ignore the technological reality of the era. Real airships of the late 1800s were slow, fragile contraptions that struggled to fly 6 miles an hour against the wind. Delschow produced over 2,000 densely packed pages. When you cut up and paste that many random words and numbers over decades, sequences like Trump and 45 will inevitably land next to each other by pure chance. Removing the manufactured mystery reveals an eccentric artist making scrapbooks, leaving no evidence of a multi-generational plot to manipulate the global timeline. To be clear, the Trump family does not have a time machine hidden in a basement. What you are witnessing is apophenia, the brain's hardwired tendency to perceive meaningful patterns in completely random information. If you run a famous surname and prominent numbers against billions of digitized historical pages, you are mathematically guaranteed to find strange, overlapping hits. The theory serves as a high-profile illustration of the brain's innate vulnerability to its own pattern-matching instincts. The true origin of this myth isn't a secret government vault. It's the massive, digitized archives of institutions like the Library of Congress, where these obscure texts actually live today. The internet acts as the ultimate data mining engine, instantly collapsing centuries of time and space. It retrieves an 1890s children's book, an eccentric butcher's scrapbook, and a deceased physicist's report onto a single screen. The internet acts as a massive data mining tool, allowing us to sift through chaotic historical archives to invent our own modern mythology.